My parents claimed they were broke and canceled our annual trip, but secretly booked first-class tickets for my brother without me. When Mom smirked and told me to work harder, I resigned as their free property manager, leaving them with a nightmare they couldn't handle. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Kin and Karma. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The notification on my phone didn't just break my heart. It shattered the fragile reality I had been carefully maintaining for over a decade. I was sitting in my home office, the glow of 3 monitors illuminating the room as the sun began to set. My eyes were burning. I had been up since 5 in the morning, managing a launch for a client in Tokyo while simultaneously coordinating a plumber for my parents' rental property on the other side of town. That was my life, a constant juggling act between running my own digital marketing agency and serving as the unpaid, unappreciated property manager for Clark and Olivia, my parents. I was exhausted. My shoulders were tight knots of tension, and a dull headache had been throbbing behind my eyes since lunch. But I kept pushing. I always kept pushing because that was the role I had been assigned in this family, the reliable one, the workhorse, the one who didn't need help because she was strong. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother, Olivia. "Natalia, darling, can you call us? Clark and I have some bad news about the summer." My stomach dropped. The summer meant our annual family reunion. It was the one time of year we all went away together, me, my parents, my brother Anthony, and his husband Alexander. It was a tradition we had kept for 15 years. It was usually the only time I felt like part of the family unit rather than their employee. I dialed immediately, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Mom, is everything okay? Is Dad sick?" No, nothing like that." Olivia's voice floated through the speaker, breezy and light, completely at odds with the dread pooling in my gut. "Put your father on speaker, dear. We want to tell you together." There was a rustling sound, and then Clark's deep, booming voice filled the room. "Natalia, listen, we've been looking at the numbers." "The numbers?" I asked, confused. I managed their numbers. I knew their finances better than they did. Their rental income alone was netting them 6 figures a year, largely thanks to my aggressive management and tenant retention strategies. "The economy is just dreadful right now," Clark sighed, a theatrical sound that I had heard him use when negotiating with contractors. "Inflation, the market volatility. We're feeling the pinch. We have to be responsible." "What are you saying?" I asked, gripping the edge of my desk. "We have to cancel the family trip to Italy," Olivia said. "We simply can't afford it this year. We have to tighten our belts. I know you were looking forward to it, but luxury travel just isn't in the cards for us right now." I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by concern. If they were claiming poverty, maybe something was wrong that I didn't know about. Had they made a bad investment I wasn't privy to? I understand," I stammered. "If money is tight, of course, we can do something local, maybe a staycation. I could host a barbecue." "Oh no, don't worry about that," Olivia said quickly, dismissively. "We'll just have a quiet summer. We don't want to put you out. Besides, you're always so busy with your computer work. It's probably a relief for you not to have to take time off, right?" Computer work? That's what they called my agency, which employed 6 people and handled accounts for Fortune 500 companies. "I can always make time for family," I said softly. "Well, it's decided," Clark stated, the finality in his tone clear. "No trip, we're hunkering down. We just wanted to let you know so you didn't book anything." "Okay," I whispered. "I love you guys." "Love you too, sweetie. Don't work too hard," Olivia chirped, and the line went dead. I sat there in silence, staring at the black screen of my phone. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the trip, but for the time I wouldn't get with them. I felt guilty, too. Maybe I should have pushed harder to increase the rent on the Lakeview property. Maybe I should have found cheaper insurance for them. If they were broke, I felt responsible. I put my head in my hands, letting the tears prick at my eyes. I was so worried about them. I was so incredibly foolish. Because the betrayal I was about to uncover was worse than any financial diagnosis could ever be. For the next 2 days, I walked around in a fog of sympathetic misery. I actually felt bad for them. I even started looking into my own savings, wondering if I could surprise them by paying for a smaller domestic trip myself. I wanted to fix it. That was my fatal flaw. I always wanted to fix things for people who broke them on purpose. I was in the middle of a Zoom call with a client when I saw the notification pop up on my secondary monitor. Because I managed my parents' rental properties, I had access to a shared email account, properties at family name. Com. This was where tenant requests, invoices, and contractor bids came in. However, my father, Clark, was notoriously bad with technology. He often used this business email for personal correspondence because he couldn't remember the password to his personal Gmail. I had set up a filter years ago to forward anything marked invoice or receipt directly to my accounting software so I wouldn't miss tax deductions. The notification that slid onto my screen read, "Confirmation, flight booking first class Emirates." I frowned, apologizing to my client. "One moment, please." My heart rate kicked up a notch. Had Dad's credit card been stolen, who was booking Emirates first class on the property email? I opened the email. It wasn't a fraudulent charge. It was a receipt. A receipt for 4 round-trip tickets to the Maldives. Departure date, June 15th. Total cost, $32,000. I stopped breathing. The names on the tickets stared back at me in bold, black text, mocking my stupidity. Passenger 1, Clark last name Passenger 2, Olivia last name Passenger 3, Anthony last name Passenger 4, Alexander last name. There was no Passenger 5. There was no Natalia. The room spun. I had to grip the armrests of my chair to keep from falling out of it. The poverty, the tightening belts, the dreadful economy. It was all a lie. A meticulously crafted lie designed to exclude exactly one person, me. They weren't broke. They were spending $32,000 on flights alone. That didn't even include the resort, which I quickly Googled based on the reservation number in the next email. The Ocean Bliss Retreat. Another $25,000 for 2 overwater bungalows. They were taking my brother, Anthony, and his husband, Alexander. They were taking the golden couple. Anthony, the corporate lawyer who drove a Porsche and never remembered Mom's birthday. Alexander, the architect who criticized my apartment every time he visited. They were going on the family trip of a lifetime, and they had looked me in the eye, well, through the phone, and lied about it. They made me feel guilty for their financial struggles while they were burning enough cash to pay off my mortgage. I closed the email, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I flashed back to the conversation 2 days ago. Olivia's voice, "It's probably a relief for you not to have to take time off, right?" She wasn't saving me time. She was discarding me. I stood up and paced my small office. The initial shock was fading, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fury in the center of my chest. I thought about the hours I spent every week dealing with their tenants. The late-night calls about broken heaters. The time I spent an entire weekend painting the rental unit myself because Clark was too cheap to hire a pro. I did all of that for free. I saved them roughly $30,000 a year in property management fees. And this was my payment. Exclusion. Lies. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. A delivery truck rumbled by. Life outside was normal, but inside my house everything had changed. I didn't call them immediately. I didn't scream. I didn't send a rage-filled text. That's what the old Natalia would have done, gotten emotional, cried, and let them gaslight her into believing she was being dramatic. No, I stared at my reflection in the window glass. My eyes looked hard. They thought I was just the help. They thought I was too busy with my computer work to notice. They thought they could use me to fund their lifestyle and then leave me behind like unwanted baggage. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I didn't just manage the properties. I controlled the entire digital infrastructure of their lives. I had the passwords, I had the contracts, I had the keys, literal and digital, and they were leaving the country in 10 days. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. I was the service child. Anthony was the show pony. Growing up, if Anthony got an A, we went out for dinner. If I got an A, it was expected. When Anthony became a lawyer, my parents threw a gala. When I started my own agency, my father asked when I was going to get a real job with benefits. I spent my 20s trying to buy their love with labor. I took over the management of their 3 investment properties 5 years ago when my dad retired. He complained that the management company was ripping him off by charging 10%, so I stepped in. "I'll do it, Dad," I had said, desperate for him to look at me with pride. "I'll handle it." And I did. I handled evictions. I handled city code inspections. I digitized their leases. I increased their profit margins by 20%. I did it all while building my own business, often sacrificing my weekends and my sanity. And for what? To be left behind while they drank champagne in the Maldives with Anthony. I needed to see them. I needed to look them in the face and give them one last chance to tell the truth. Maybe, just maybe, this was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were planning to surprise me. The delusional part of my brain still clung to this hope. I drove over to their house, a sprawling, pristine colonial in the wealthy suburbs, that Sunday for our usual family dinner. When I walked in, the atmosphere was thick with excitement that vanished the moment they saw me. "Natalia." Olivia chirped, smoothing down her silk blouse. She looked younger than her 62 years, thanks to a strict regimen of Pilates and expensive skincare, funded in part by the rental income I secured for them. "We didn't know if you'd make it. You're always so, buried in your laptop." "I made time," I said, forcing a smile. I walked into the living room. Clark was sitting in his leather armchair, swirling a glass of scotch. Anthony and Alexander were on the sofa, looking tanned and relaxed. "Hey, Nat," Anthony said, not looking up from his phone. "Still fixing the internet for a living." Alexander chuckled. "Be nice, Anthony. Someone has to make sure the memes keep flowing." I ignored the jab. I took a seat on the ottoman, keeping my distance. "So," I said, keeping my voice steady, "how is everyone? Any plans for the summer now that the Italy trip is canceled?" The room went deadly silent. Clark cleared his throat loud enough to rattle the windows. "Plans? No plans, just gardening, golf." "And watching expenses," Olivia added quickly, giving me a sad, pitying look. "It's really tough out there, Natalia. You should be careful too. The economy is crashing." "Right," I said. "It's a shame. I really needed a break." "Well," Anthony said, stretching his arms over his head, "we're just going to lay low. Alex and I might go camping or something cheap." I looked at Anthony. He was wearing a watch that cost more than my car. He was lying to my face with the ease of a sociopath. "Camping?" I asked. "That doesn't sound like you." "We're trying new things," Alexander said, smirking at Anthony. A secret look passed between them, a look of shared superiority. "Actually," Clark interrupted, leaning forward, "since you're here, Natalia, I need you to handle something. The tenant in the downtown condo, Unit 4B, he's complaining about the AC again. I need you to go over there tomorrow and check it out. I don't want to pay a technician if it's just a clogged filter." "Tomorrow?" I asked. "I have 3 client meetings tomorrow, Dad." Clark scowled. "It won't take long. You work from home, you have flexibility, just do it. We can't afford a repair bill right now. Not with the situation." "The situation," I repeated. "The financial crisis." "Exactly," Olivia said. She sipped her wine. "We all have to make sacrifices." I looked around the room. I looked at the expensive scotch in my father's hand. I looked at my mother's new diamond earrings, which I noticed for the first time. I looked at my brother and his husband, suppressing giggles on the couch. They weren't just using me. They were laughing at me. They saw me as the servant who kept the engine running so they could enjoy the ride. "I found something interesting in the property email," I said. The words hung in the air. Clark froze. "What?" "An email from Emirates," I said calmly. The color drained from Olivia's face. Anthony stopped scrolling on his phone. "Oh," Clark said, his eyes darting to Olivia. "That." "Yeah, that," I said. 4 tickets, first class, Maldives, leaving next week. There was a long, excruciating silence. Then, instead of apologizing, instead of looking ashamed, Olivia's expression hardened. The mask of the sweet, struggling mother fell away, revealing the cold socialite underneath. She set her wine glass down. "Well," she said, her voice sharp. "Since you were snooping, yes, we are going." "You told me you were broke," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "You canceled the family trip." "We canceled your part of the trip," Anthony corrected, looking bored. "Let's be real, Nat, you bring the mood down. You're always talking about work or stressing about timelines. We wanted a vacation, not a project management seminar." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I talk about work because I'm managing your properties, Anthony. I stress about timelines so Mom and Dad get paid." "And we appreciate that," Olivia said, waving her hand dismissively. "But this is a special trip, a celebration." "Celebrating what?" I asked. "Success," Clark grunted. "Anthony just made partner. Alexander won an award, we wanted to treat them." "And you couldn't tell me," I asked. "You had to lie." "We didn't want you to feel bad that you couldn't afford to join us," Olivia said. And there it was, the smirk. It started at the corner of her mouth and curled up into a hateful little sneer. She looked me up and down, taking in my simple jeans and blouse, contrasting it with her designer outfit. "Let's be honest, Natalia," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "First class to the Maldives is expensive. It's not for people with inconsistent income. We treated the boys because they are at a certain level. Maybe next time, if you get a real corporate job and work harder, you can afford to buy your own ticket and come along." The room spun. Work harder. I worked 80 hours a week. I managed their lives. I subsidized their laziness. "Work harder." I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't be dramatic," Clark snapped. "It's done. We're going. You're staying. Now about that AC unit in 4B, make sure you check it before noon." I looked at them. Really looked at them. I saw the entitlement, the cruelty, and the absolute confidence that I would just take it. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was desperate for their approval. I stood up slowly. A strange calm washed over me. It was the calm of a soldier who realizes the war is over and they no longer have to follow orders. "Okay," I said. Olivia blinked. "Okay." "Okay," I repeated. "I hope you have a wonderful trip." "Good," Clark said, relaxing. "I knew you'd be sensible. Don't forget the AC." "I won't," I said. I walked out of the house without looking back. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. As I walked to my car, I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone. I opened the calendar app. I looked at the date. They were leaving in 7 days. 7 days was plenty of time to ensure that when they came back, if they came back, they wouldn't have a kingdom left to rule. The drive home from my parents' house was eerily silent. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my mind was racing at a speed that would have terrified my mother. I didn't feel sadness anymore. That part of me, the daughter desperate for approval, had died the moment Olivia smirked. What remained was cold, calculating, and professionally detached. They thought I was just their daughter. They forgot I was also their property manager, their IT support, their legal liaison, and the architect of their financial stability. When I got home, I didn't go to sleep. I went straight to my office and pulled up my master spreadsheet. This document, affectionately named the Empire, contained every login, every password, every lease agreement, every vendor contract, and every automated payment schedule for my parents' 3 properties: the downtown condo, the suburban duplex, and the crown jewel, the lake house they rented out for weddings and corporate retreats. I also pulled up my personal bank statements. For 5 years, I had been paying for small repairs out of pocket and forgetting to reimburse myself because Dad was stressed about money. I had been using my own Adobe Creative Cloud subscription to design their marketing materials. I had been using my own DocuSign account for their leases. I started calculating. Property management fees, industry standard 10% of gross rent, $32,000 year unpaid. Leasing fees, 1 month's rent per new tenant, $12,000 year unpaid. Vendor coordination fees, $5,000 year unpaid. Marketing and design services, $15,000 year unpaid. Total estimated value of my free labor over 5 years, approx. $320,000. They had saved over $250,000 because of me. And they used that savings to buy first-class tickets to the Maldives for the son who couldn't even be bothered to call them on their birthdays. Maybe next time you should work harder, I whispered to the empty room, mimicking my mother's voice. I opened a new document. Title, Resignation and Handover. But I wasn't just going to quit. That would be too easy. I needed to ensure they felt the full weight of my absence. I needed them to understand exactly what working harder looked like. I started digging into the upcoming lease renewals. As luck would have it, 2 major leases, the downtown condo and 1 unit in the duplex, were up for renewal on July 1st. My parents were leaving for the Maldives on June 15th and returning on July 5th. Usually, I would have already sent out the renewal offers, negotiated the rent increases, and secured the signatures. I hadn't done it yet because I was waiting for the right time to discuss the market rates with Clark. There would be no discussion. I drafted emails to the tenants, not renewal offers, notices of management change. Dear tenant, please be advised that effective immediately, Natalia last name and my agency name will no longer be managing this property. All future correspondence, rent payments, and maintenance requests must be directed to the property owners, Clark and Olivia last name. Their direct contact information is below. I didn't send them yet, I saved them as drafts. Next, I looked at the family plan accounts. My parents, Anthony and Alexander, were all on my corporate cell phone plan. It was a perk of my business account, unlimited data, international roaming, the works. They paid me, whenever they remembered, usually never. I logged into the carrier's portal. I set a scheduled cancellation for all lines except my own. Effective date, June 16th. 1 day after they landed in the Maldives. Then I looked at the insurance. I had bundled their rental dwelling policies with my business liability insurance to get them a massive group discount. It saved them about $4,000 a year. I called my broker the next morning. Hi, Sarah. I need to unbundle the family properties from my policy. Yes, effective immediately. They'll need to secure their own coverage. Yes, I know the rates will triple. They're aware. Please send the notification to their home address. I was methodical, I was precise, I was working harder than I ever had before. But the real leverage, the trap, was the lake house. The lake house was their biggest income generator. It was booked solid for June and July. Weddings, reunions, corporate retreats. It required constant attention, cleaning crews, caterer coordination, key handoffs. I had a specialized app on my phone that controlled the smart locks, the thermostat, the security cameras, and the pool heater. I went into the app. I transferred owner status to Clark's email address. Then I deleted my own account. I did this for every single digital tool I used to manage their empire. By Wednesday, I had prepared a physical dossier. It was 3 inches thick. It contained keys, printed spreadsheets of upcoming expenses, a list of pending maintenance issues, including the AC in Unit 4B, and the raw, unorganized files of every lease. I wasn't just giving them their properties back. I was giving them chaos. Thursday, 3 days before their flight, I asked to come over for a quick visit before they left. I told them I had a bon voyage gift. Oh, Natalia, that's so sweet. Olivia cooed over the phone. We're just packing, come on over. When I arrived, the house was a flurry of activity. Suitcases were open everywhere, designer luggage, of course. Anthony and Alexander were there, pre-gaming the vacation with mimosas. Hey, sis. Anthony called out, raising a glass. Come to wish us well. Don't worry, we'll send you a postcard. Actually, I said, walking into the living room with a heavy cardboard box in my arms. I came to give you this. I dropped the box onto the coffee table with a loud thud. The mimosas rattled. What's this? Clark asked, frowning. Books. No, I said, standing tall. That is the business. The what? Olivia asked, pausing mid-fold of a silk scarf. That box contains the keys to all 3 properties, I said, my voice clear and steady. It contains the physical leases, the tenant ledgers, the unpaid invoices for the plumber and the landscaper, and the contact info for the city inspector who is coming on Tuesday. I don't understand, Clark said, a nervous laugh escaping him. Why are you giving us this? You handle this stuff. Not anymore, I said. As of this moment, I am resigning as your property manager, effective immediately. Silence, absolute stunned silence. You can't be serious, Olivia said, her smile faltering. We leave in 3 days, Natalia. We're going to the Maldives. I know, I said, and I hope you have a great time. But since I need to focus on my real job and work harder to afford my own vacations, I can no longer afford to donate 20 hours a week to your business for free. Free, Anthony scoffed. You do it because you're family, it's not a job. It is a job, Anthony, I snapped, turning on him. A job that saves Mom and Dad $30,000 a year, money they used to buy your ticket. Now, hold on, Clark boomed, his face turning red. You can't just dump this on us. Who is going to handle the tenants while we're gone? You are, I said. Or you can hire a management company. I included a list of 3 reputable firms in the box. Their rates are between 10% and 12%. We can't pay that, Olivia shrieked. We were on a budget. Then I guess you'll be managing it from the beach, I said. Oh, and one more thing. Since I'm no longer managing the properties, I've removed them from my corporate insurance policy. You have 48 hours to secure new insurance before the coverage lapses, if a pipe bursts or a tenant slips and falls while you're uninsured. Well, you know the liability laws better than I do, Anthony. Anthony sat up straight. You canceled their insurance. Are you insane? I unbundled my assets, I corrected. I have to protect my own business. Financial responsibility, right? You vindictive little. Olivia started, stepping forward. Her face was twisted in ugly rage. You are doing this to punish us because you're jealous. I'm doing this because you fired me, I said calmly. You fired me as a daughter when you lied to my face. I'm just making the paperwork official. You are ruining our trip, Olivia screamed. How are we supposed to relax knowing we have to deal with toilets and tenants? That sounds like a you problem, I said. Maybe you should have thought about that before you booked a $30,000 vacation on the back of my unpaid labor. Natalia, please, Clark said, his voice dropping to a desperate wheedle. Let's be reasonable. We can pay you. We can give you a stipend when we get back. Too little, too late, Dad, I said. My rate is $150 an hour, and I'm booked solid until, well, forever. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Olivia hissed, don't expect a souvenir. I stopped and looked back at them. They looked small, petty, panicked. I don't want a souvenir, Mom, I said. I want respect, and since you can't afford that, I'm taking my dignity instead. I walked out. Behind me, I heard the chaos erupt. Clark shouting at Olivia screaming about insurance, Anthony yelling about liability, but the real show hadn't even started yet. I still had one more card to play. The phones. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in panic. My phone blew up. 47 missed calls from Mom, 32 from Dad, 12 from Anthony. A string of texts ranging from begging, please, Nat, we can't figure out the login for the bank, to threatening, I'm going to write you out of the will. I didn't block them, I just muted the notifications. I wanted to see the receipts of their desperation. On Saturday morning, the day before their flight, I received an email from the tenants in the downtown condo. Urgent, water leak in the bathroom. It's flooding into the unit below. We called the number you gave us, Clark's cell, but nobody answered. The building manager is threatening to shut off the water to the whole floor. I smiled. Clark never answered numbers he didn't recognize. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Clark with a simple subject line, FYI emergency. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Clark. I let it go to voicemail. Natalia, pick up. The condo is flooding. What plumber do we use? What's the account number for the emergency service? They won't come out without a pre-authorization code. Help me. I took a sip of my coffee. The pre-authorization code was in the box I left on their coffee table, in a folder marked vendors. If they had bothered to look at it instead of just screaming at each other, they would know. But they were lazy. They were used to me fixing it. I didn't call back. The next morning, Sunday, was departure day. I woke up early. I knew their flight was at 10:00 a.m. They would be at the airport by 7:00 a.m. At 8:00 a.m., I logged into my carrier account. I hit the cancel service button for the 4 lines associated with their devices. "Are you sure?" the screen asked. "Yes. Service terminated." I imagined the scene. They are at the gate or maybe in the lounge. They are trying to post their first class selfies to Instagram. They are trying to check their emails for the hotel confirmation. And suddenly, nothing, no signal, no service. They would be stranded in a foreign country, the Maldives, without phone service. No Google Maps, no translation apps, no way to call the hotel shuttle, no two-factor authentication for their banking apps. It was petty, it was nuclear, it was perfect. 2 days later, I was at work when I got a call from an unknown number. It was international. I picked up. "This is Natalia." "You little witch." It was Olivia. She was shrieking. The connection was crackly. "We are at the resort and our phones don't work. We had to buy a $50 calling card from the concierge. How could you cut us off?" "I'm just separating our finances, Mom," I said cheerfully. "I told you. I have to be responsible. I can't be carrying 4 adults on my plan anymore. You told me to tighten my belt. We can't access our bank accounts." She wailed. "The verification codes are going to our dead numbers. We can't transfer money. The hotel is asking for a different card because Clark's is maxed out from the tickets." "Oh, that sounds stressful," I said. "Maybe you should have checked your limits before you left, or maybe Anthony can pay. He's a partner, right?" "Anthony is furious. He can't check his work emails. He might lose a client." "Maybe he should work harder," I said. "Natalia, please," she sobbed. "Fix it. Turn the phones back on. We will pay you whatever you want. We are stuck here." "I can't turn them back on, Mom," I said. "The numbers have been released to the pool. They're gone. You'll have to get new numbers when you get back." "When we get back," she screamed, "we might have to come back early. The condo tenant is threatening to sue us because of the mold from the leak. The insurance lapsed." My heart did a little flutter of victory. "You didn't renew the insurance." "We forgot we were packing." "Well," I said, "that sounds like a very expensive mistake, but look on the bright side. You're in the Maldives, enjoy the beach." "Natalia." I hung up. I sat back in my chair. The silence in my office was beautiful. They were trapped in paradise. Their assets back home were crumbling. They were bleeding money. They had no access to their funds. And the people they relied on, Anthony and Alexander, were useless in a crisis. But the final blow was yet to come. The lease renewal for the lake house. The tenants, a wealthy couple who rented it for the entire summer every year for $40,000, had emailed me directly. "Hi Natalia, we saw your notice about the management change. To be honest, we aren't comfortable dealing directly with your father. He was quite rude to us last year during the inspection. If you aren't managing the property, we're going to pass on renewing this year. We found another place." $40,000. Gone. I forwarded that email to Clark's email address, knowing he wouldn't see it until he found a way to log in without his phone. The investigation was over. The case was built. The verdict was guilty. And the sentence was total financial chaos. The fallout was spectacular, but it wasn't instantaneous. It was a slow, agonizing burn that I watched from the comfort of my home office, sipping coffee while my parents' carefully constructed life disintegrated thousands of miles away. First, the silence. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no emails, no texts. I assumed they were either drowning in logistical nightmares or had found a way to enjoy the beach despite the looming disaster. Then came the storm. It started on a Tuesday, 5 days into their trip. My phone rang. It was a local number I didn't recognize. "Is this Natalia?" A woman's voice asked, clipped and professional. "Speaking." This is Sarah from the insurance agency. We've been trying to reach your parents regarding the policy lapse on the downtown property. We received a claim for water damage from the unit below yours. Unit 3B, significant ceiling collapse and mold remediation required. Since the policy was not renewed within the grace period, the claim has been denied. The total estimated damages are currently upwards of $45,000. I let out a low whistle. 45,000. Yes, Sarah said. And the owner of Unit 3B is threatening legal action if repairs don't start immediately. We've been trying to call Clark and Olivia, but their numbers are disconnected. Do you have an alternate contact for them? I'm afraid not, I said, my voice steady. They are currently out of the country on a luxury vacation. You could try emailing them, but... Well, access might be limited. I see, Sarah said, sounding pained. Well, Ms. Natalia, since you are no longer the authorized representative on the account, I can't discuss this further. But please convey the urgency if you speak to them. I will, I said. Good luck. 2 hours later, I received an email from the lake house tenants, the wealthy couple who paid $40,000 for the summer. Subject: termination of lease agreement. Dear Clark, we are writing to formally decline the lease renewal for the upcoming season. As previously stated, our comfort with the management transition was low. Furthermore, we attempted to reach you regarding the deposit return for last year, and the number provided was out of service. This lack of professionalism confirms our decision. We have secured a rental elsewhere. Please forward our deposit to the address below. That was a $40,000 loss, plus the $45,000 in damages, plus the cost of emergency repairs. They were now in the hole for roughly $85,000. Their first-class trip had just cost them triple what they paid for the tickets. But the coup de grace came the next day. I was at the grocery store when my phone buzzed. It was a FaceTime call from an unknown email address. I hesitated, then answered. It was my mother. She looked haggard. Her hair was frizzy, her face sunburned and devoid of makeup. She was holding the phone close to her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. In the background, I could see palm trees and blue water, but the paradise looked like a prison. Natalia, she sobbed. Oh, thank God. We borrowed a tablet from a British couple at the pool. Please, you have to help us. Mom, I asked, feigning concern. What's wrong? You look terrible. Everything is ruined, she wailed. We can't access our bank accounts. The two-factor authentication codes are going to the dead phones. The hotel is threatening to lock us out of our room because the credit card on file was declined. Clark hit his limit with the tickets. That sounds awful, I said. Where are Anthony and Alexander? They're fighting, she cried. Anthony is blaming us for not having cash. Alexander is threatening to leave and fly home early, but he can't change his ticket without internet access. It's a nightmare. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, but what do you want me to do? Wire us money. She begged, please, just $5,000 to cover the hotel bill until we get back. We'll pay you back, I swear. We'll sell the car, anything. I paused. I looked at a display of avocados. I thought about the smirk. Maybe next time you should work harder. I can't do that, Mom, I said gently. What? Why? Because, I said, I have to be responsible with my finances. I have bills to pay, and besides, the downtown condo just had a massive leak. The insurance denied the claim because you didn't renew it. You're looking at a $45,000 bill when you get back, and the lake house tenants just canceled. That's another $40,000 gone. I watched the blood drain from her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. It is, I said. So, really, sending you money would just be throwing it into a black hole. You need every penny you have to pay for the lawyers when you get back. Lawyers. Unit 3B is suing, I said. Enjoy the rest of your trip, Mom. I have to go. I have a client meeting. Natalia, wait. Don't hang up. We're your parents. And I'm just the help, I said, and the help just quit. I ended the call. They returned 10 days early. I didn't pick them up from the airport. They had to take a taxi, and Uber, actually, which Anthony paid for on his corporate card because Clark's cards were all frozen or declined. When they arrived at their house, it wasn't a homecoming. It was a crime scene of their own making. The mailbox was overflowing with urgent notices from the city, the condo association, and the insurance company. The grass was knee-high because they forgot to pay the landscaper. I went over 2 days later, not to apologize, but to drop off a final box of mail I had collected. The house was dark. The air conditioning was off. I found them in the kitchen. Clark was sitting at the table, head in his hands, surrounded by stacks of paper. Olivia was staring out the window, looking 10 years older. Anthony was nowhere to be seen. "Hi," I said, placing the box on the counter. Clark looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "You," he croaked. "Me," I said. "You ruined us," Olivia whispered, not turning around. "You destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I just stopped holding it together for you. You built a house of cards on my back, and when I stood up, it fell." "The condo damages are catastrophic," Clark said, his voice trembling. "We have to sell the lake house to pay for it. The tenants sued. We settled out of court, but it wiped out our savings." "And Anthony?" I asked. "He left," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "He and Alexander went back to their apartment. They said they couldn't deal with the drama. They didn't even offer to help pay for the Uber." I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, like watching a sad movie. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, "but maybe it's for the best. Now you know who is actually there for you." "Are you here for us?" Clark asked, looking at me with a glimmer of hope. "Will you help us fix this? Please, Natalia, we can't handle the contractors, we don't know the laws." I looked at my father, the man who had mocked my career, the man who had chosen to spoil my brother while I worked for free. "No," I said, the hope in his eyes died. "I'm not going to manage your properties anymore," I said. "I'm not going to be your IT support. I'm not going to be your retirement plan. I have my own life. I have my own business, and I have to work hard to maintain it." "But what will we do?" Olivia asked, turning to face me. "We're old, we're tired." "Then retire," I said. "Sell the properties, downsize, live within your means. You don't need a rental empire, you just need a home." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. It wasn't mine. "This is a real estate agent I know. She specializes in distress sales. She can help you offload the condo and the lake house quickly." I placed the card on the table next to the pile of lawsuits. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad." I walked out of the house. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't hate them. I didn't want them to suffer. I just wanted them to face the consequences of their actions, and they were. 6 months later, they sold the lake house and the condo. They moved into a smaller townhouse. We speak occasionally on holidays mostly. The conversations are polite, surface level. They don't ask me for tech support anymore. They don't ask me for money. Anthony and Alexander broke up shortly after the trip. Turns out Alexander didn't like drama or people who lost their inheritance. Anthony is currently living in a studio apartment, trying to pay off his own debts. As for me, I took my first vacation in 5 years last month. I went to Italy. I flew business class. I paid for it myself. And when the flight attendant asked if I wanted champagne, I smiled and said, "Yes, please, I earned it."